Renata, you talked there about the motivational value that you found from the Vatican. I think anyone who was there would probably agree that the real power of that event was the motivation and inspiration given by people who have sort of been there and done that, who've faced up to a challenge, who've got over a hurdle, who've been helped to get over a hurdle one way or the other. Hearing those stories has a huge impact, and I'm delighted to say we're going to get one of those stories for you now. Kylan Moore is with us. Kylan, thank you very much for being with us today. Kylan has quite a story to tell. Growing up in Compton with all the attendant issues that you would expect there from gangs and drugs and a very difficult way of life. Well, he's now studying at the University of Oxford. Yeah. Even bigger round of applause for this bit, please, because he's already studied at my old university, University of Bristol, and many others besides. It is an extraordinary story. From South LA baller to college athlete to Rhodes scholar, Kylan has an amazing story to tell. Thanks for joining us. Oh. And he's a gentleman to boot.
So first and foremost, I want to say I'm extremely blessed to be here today speaking. I want to thank God for the opportunity to be here. I want to thank LMU for me being here as well. I actually had my baccalaureate mass when I was in high school at the chapel over here at LMU. And in addition to that, I want to thank LA 84 for donating to a youth football program that enabled a young kid from Compton that had to collect cans and bottles in order to get his football fees paid for. So I want to say thank you. So a little bit about myself. My name is Kylan Moore. I hail from Compton, California. I grew up right on the borderline of Compton and Carson pretty much all of my life. I saw a lot of things at an early age that children typically would not see. What Compton was characterized for me, if I had to think about it, I remember hearing those gunshots at nighttime. But that's not the thing that woke me up out of my sleep late at night. What used to wake me up was hearing those rats and those roaches move things under the bed late at night. You know, being scared to drop something on the side of the bed because I don't want anything to bite me or to touch me. I can recall we had this thing at my house that you may not be familiar with called a bucket bath. So it's when you wanted to go take a shower, but you realize that you don't have hot water and you don't have a place to take a shower at. So what we would do, we would go outside, fill up a bucket of water, bring it back in the house, microwave or boil some of the water, mix it up, and just take a wash up. This characterized a lot of my youth. I remember when I was in elementary school, when I realized that we were in the hood, because we had a game that we used to play in my neighborhood called Bullets. On the way, walking home from school, me and my cousin Lauren and my younger brother Chase, we would see who could collect the most bullets off the ground by the time we got home. We sat down in the garage and we would play with them like as if they were marbles. And I remember growing up, so many things looked like they were going to push me down and keep me out of focus of being anything great or amounting to anything in my life and becoming a statistic like what we just saw. And I remember an event that pushed me down even further, and it made me grow up as a man when my mom got sick. When I was in the 3rd grade, about 8 years old, my mom got sick. She had a tumor on one of the chambers of her heart. By the grace of God, we had the money somehow, and we had insurance so she can get the surgery paid for it. She went in for the open heart surgery, and by the grace of God, the surgery was successful. But while my mom was recovering from open heart surgery, she was raped by one of the workers at the hospital while she was under a morphine tap. This put my mom in a state of depression where now she's recovering psychologically from everything that she had been through and then recovering physiologically from open heart surgery. So it was at this time period in my life where I would say that I became the man of the house and I had to grow up, where my mom was relegated to just sleeping on the couch and laying there for months to, it almost seemed like an eternity at a time. Becoming the man in the house, what does that consist of? That consists of me making sure that my younger brother gets all the things that he needs, making sure that we're safe on a daily basis, and making sure that we have food. I remember early in the morning, the same way that I collected those cans and bottles to pay for my youth football fees, I initially started the habit of collecting cans and bottles because I would collect as many as I can at 5 and 6 a.m. and then save them all in the backyard, hop on the 205 bus to San Pedro or to Wilmington, turn them in at the recycling center, and then bring the money back and use that to buy groceries. If you were to ask my younger brother, how did he learn how to ride his bicycle? Or how did he learn how to tie his shoes? How did he learn mathematics? Or how did he become literate and learn how to read? He would have to cite his older brother as his source for all of those things. And times just seemed like they just kept going, getting tougher and tougher. Everything that I saw, everything that I did. And I think back to a little bit further in my story when I was 16 years old, and I was standing on that football field. And I went to high school in Watts, in South Central, right on South Central Avenue at a school called Verbum Day. And it was very normal to hear that helicopter fly over the field at some point looking for someone in the Nickerson Gardens projects. So it wasn't too abnormal to see cops and things like that, especially when there are drug houses right across the street of my high school. So one day it was weird. We saw the cops kind of come onto the field. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe, they're going to tell us to go inside like usual, and we're going to have another drive-by drill perhaps. A drive-by drill is essentially when you get the kids ready for when somebody comes with the gun and does a drive-by, for those that don't know. So I'm thinking we might have a drive-by drill, whatever the case is, and the cops walk out onto the field, and they said, we need this young man to come with us. So they pulled me in, and I'm confused. I'm thinking maybe, they got me. They caught me for when I stole candy from Rite Aid in elementary school or middle school. So they bring me off the field, and they just put me in the car. They don't say much. We go all the way back home to where I live, and we get there. The doors are kicked in, windows are broken, and there's helicopters hovering above my house. There's cops everywhere that you can see, and they have shotguns pointing at all the angles of my house. What had happened was the police were looking for my father. My father had just committed a murder in Fontana, so they came back to my house to find him. And I think back to the fact that my mom got sick, and I had to grow up and become the man of the house. I think about the statistic that represents my father as being someone convicted of a life sentence for murder. And I think that most people perhaps could have succumbed to these circumstances, and some would say rightfully so. But then I had to think back to what my mom used to tell me. And she said, baby, we might live in the hood, but the hood will not live in us. She was firm in that stance, and everything that we saw as a kid, she says, we might not have it now, but I guarantee you we will have it in the future. You just hang on to that football, and I guarantee you God is going to make something special happen. You stay faithful in those academics, and you do as best as you can, and I guarantee that if you give God your best to these academics and to these athletics, that he will bless it, and he will give it back to you tenfold. So I think back to what used to give me safety and give me solace when I was walking around those streets on South Central Avenue, or when I was walking down Avalon, and the blood gang and the Crip gang asked me where I'm from. But luckily, I had that football tucked right in my arm, and I'll say, I don't bang. I just play football. And they will respect that. So I realized very early on that I wasn't too certain about what football or sports would produce long-term as it pertains to a career or as it pertains to take care of my family, but I understood very early on that it would keep me out of mortal danger. That's what sports meant to me as a kid. So I remember when I think back to how my story progressed, I used football as a tool, as a methodology in order for me to take my life to places that I never even thought of in my entire life. So I ended up going to my first college in New York. While I was at this college in New York, everything was going well at first. It seems like everything was. Mom, take a seat. Hurry up. My mom. Everybody clap for my mom. I'm here to speak. I'm so distracted. I'm like, wow, my mom's here. Mom, take a seat. Sit down. Come on. Thank you for coming, Mom. But so like I said, my mom told me we may live in the hood, but the hood will not live in us. And she was firm in her stance. So I ended up going to college, my first college in New York, in Poughkeepsie, New York, called Marist College. And I was there when I got there, I was so surprised at how easy things were. And people would tell me that college was a lot harder. But in my mind, I was thinking, okay, I have 3 meals a day for the first time in my life, and there's no gunshots going off at nighttime. I have all-you-can-eat access to the caf. I thought it was a buffet. The people there, they always complained about the food. For me, it was a buffet. I didn't really say much as it pertains to that. But I just realized, once I realized that my life was changing when I went into the bathroom, my first time being in Champagne Hall at Marist College, and I turned on that faucet, that left knob and that hot water came out. I immediately broke down in tears. I didn't even realize that we grew up without hot water my entire life. And it wasn't until then that I realized the power of sport and the power of academics. So my story, as we progressed a little bit, I ended up becoming a prominent football player on campus. I was doing my best in my academics, but then I had a stop sign in my life. I had an injury that held me out from playing sports. Everything looked like it was going right for me. I was going to be the starting quarterback. Everything was looking up. And then I hurt my back so badly that I couldn't even walk. I was relegated to a bed, just like my mom was during that time period when she was sick. And I had to stay in that bed almost every day, all day long for a period of like 2 or 3 months. But it was during this time period that I strengthened my mind because my body was weak at that time. So I told myself, you know what? I heard a quote, and it changed my entire life. I'll tell you the quote in a second. But I heard that quote, and it made me start to dream incredible dreams, massive dreams, I would say, dreams that are so big, so unimaginable. So I wrote down the biggest dreams that I could think of on a piece of paper. I wrote down Division I football player and Harvard PhD. So why Harvard PhD? Well, I come from an elementary school that had dictionaries that were so antiquated that they didn't have the word computer in it. So I knew certainly if I was able to achieve heights like that academically, that would tell every single Kylan Moore and every single kid that comes from the inner city that anything is possible as it pertains to your academics and as it pertains to you using your mind. Why did I write down Division I football player? Because at that time, being an injured individual, I certainly was not that. I told myself that I would not stop playing football until my father could see me on television from the prison that he's at in Tehachapi, California. It had nothing to do with making the NFL at that point when I wrote down Division I football player. It was about changing a culture, changing the meaning of a last name, changing a situation in my community and setting a new precedent for the youth that come from my community. So I told myself that if I'm gonna make these dreams a reality, I need to save up some money and get a job so I could, get a plane to go to the next place. I've always been a little delusional. I've been a bit of a dreamer all of my life. And so I get a job as a janitor. So now I go from somebody that's on the billboards, having documentaries made about him, and people are coming up for autographs and saying, hey, you want to be like him when you grow up. So now people are ignoring me and, walking past me as I mop and as I sweep. It was a very humbling time period in my life. And I remember a couple of days after I heard that quote, I'm mopping and I'm sweeping, the quote that changed my life. I'm mopping and I'm sweeping like usual, kind of with my hoodie on because I was very ashamed of who I was at that time. And then a young man walked past me. I didn't really like this guy. He walked past me and he said, you missed the spot. I turned around and I said, where? And then he spit on the floor. I think I just explained, I come from Compton. All right. So needless to say, I had a little internal battle right there as I'm standing looking at that spit, looking at that man, and then looking at my hands. So I stood there for a second, but that quote got into my spirit. And he started walking away. I said, hey, bro, come back. I said, where are you going? He said, oh, I'm going to the calf, to go eat. Something you can't do because you're a janitor. I said, is that right? I turned towards him. I said, I'll tell you what. When you go to that calf, tell them to put that food into your hands, not a plate. And then when you're done, bring that food out here, put it back on this floor, and eat it off this floor. That's how clean this floor is going to be when you get back. Have a nice day. I heard a quote that day. Dr. Martin Luther King. It says, if it falls your lot to be a street sweeper, sweep streets like Michelangelo painted. Sweep streets like Beethoven composed music. Sweep streets like Shakespeare wrote plays. Sweep streets so well that when you die, may all the hosts of heaven and earth look upon your grave and say, there lived a street sweeper who did his job well. I changed my entire mindset on that day. I told myself, not only will I be a janitor, but I'll be the best dang janitor that ever lived. If anybody comes past this spot on Marist College campus, they're going to know Kylan Lewis Moore must have been there because it's spotless. And that's the type of mindset that I started to apply to every single thing that I did as it pertains to my academics, as it pertains to me taking my faith seriously, or as it pertains to football. So now I have to reflect and think back to the statement that the young man said when he said, you missed the spot. And I think about the fact that I just came from my little dorm room over at LMU to come here to talk, and I was looking at my passport, and I realized that I'm running out of pages. I'm going to need a new passport soon because I've been so many places to tell this testimony of how I didn't miss that spot. I started thinking about the fact that I went to the University of Bristol on a Fulbright scholarship to study the transatlantic slave trade, but he said I missed this spot. I think about the fact that I went to Princeton to study in the Public Policy and International Affairs Institute at the Woodrow Wilson School of Public Policy in 2015, but he said I missed this spot. I think about the fact that I did play at TCU, and my father did see me run down that field with that number 21 on my back and that Moore on the last name of my jersey, on my jersey, but he said I missed this spot. I think about the fact that I'm writing a book right now, and the literary agent that represents me is the same one that represents President Obama, but he said I missed this spot. I'm thinking about the fact that I'm married to a beautiful woman from Paraguay that will be representing her country in the Japan 2020 Olympics, but he said I missed this spot. I'm thinking about the fact that I played football in college, and I don't play football anymore, but I'm still on scholarship. I'm on a Rhodes scholarship at the #1 university in the world. I got this spot. I got the spot. And I want to tell you guys as an encouragement to be those people for the youth that are in your life, to help them get that spot. For those youth that are sitting there on the stoop in Harlem, for those kids that are in Birmingham, Alabama, for those kids that are in Watts, that are in Compton, that are in Long Beach, that are in Inglewood, that are in Hawthorne, for those kids in Detroit, to be those people in this room that enable them to dream those dreams. Enable them to dream those dreams that are so big, so unimaginable, so unrealistic, so unfathomable that without divine intervention, they're destined to fail. Be the person that enables someone to dream dreams that are too big. Thank you.